Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kirsten Milks. I'm the 2025 NABT president, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Thriving as Educators, an evening with Jess Cleeves. Joining me for moderation and chat assistance today are Jackie Rips-Pepin and Christy Daniel, and I'm so thankful that we at NABT are able to bring you Jess. This is like, for those of you who understand, having Taylor on the podcast. I'm just very excited about our evening together. So I want to introduce you to Jess. She is an educator, author, and relationship expert. Her BS in biology from San Francisco State University lays a strategic scientific foundation for her clinical work. Importantly for us, her Master's of Arts in Teaching from Stanford University, 2 decades of experience teaching science in impacted public schools, and university roles facilitating teacher training, all translate to meaningful, actionable learning. We're here together because Jess has published a wonderful book, Planning to Stay: Burnout, Demoralization, Exploitation, and How to Reclaim Self-Care, Your Classroom, and Your Life Anyway. This book supports teachers to thrive realistically, despite increasingly challenging circumstances. And we get a special discount on the book. So stay tuned for that information.
Hi, everybody. Is Kirsten frozen for everybody? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was wondering if it was me or if it was Kirsten, but I think it's Kirsten.
I think it's Kirsten. Jess, why don't you go ahead and start?
Can everybody see and hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
This
you're
is
good.
fantastic.
Okay, great. While we're working on it, I'm going to turn my phone Wi-Fi off just so I don't do the same thing. Hello, everyone. My name is Jess. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides. That'll just take me a second. Thank you so much for your patience. Unfortunately, I'm going to do it a fancy way, which doesn't let me pre-select. And here we go. Okay. As y'all usually run this, I am honored and privileged to collect your questions in the Q&A, and by me, I mean Jackie, Christy, and Kirsten are going to help me out with that. So we will have some time at the end for questions. Again, I am here because of this offering I made to the profession. And so I want to start by acknowledging that I won't be able to get you everything today, but I'll do my best to get you as much as I can. Okay. Let's see. Why aren't you letting me advance? We might have to do this differently if it won't let me advance the slides. Thanks for everybody's patience. There we go. So before we start, because a lot of the way that I work is rooted in evolutionary psychology, I'm aware that it took a lot for y'all to get here, and I'm aware that you're thinking about one or two things that have nothing to do with this talk. So in order to create a little space in your cognitive function and your executive function, I'd like you to go ahead 90 seconds-ish, and I'd like you to just write, sort of brainstorm style, pour out everything that you're worried about in your choice to be here this evening, what you're not able to get done right now, what you're stressed about, just anything teaching related. If you want to expand it to beyond teaching related, that's okay. I just want to acknowledge that may require more than 90 seconds. So I'll just give you a moment this can be on your phone, this can be on a sticky note, this can be in a planner. Just write out all of the teaching related things that you're stressed about. And those of you who are just joining us, welcome. I'm Jess. Thank you for being here. If you are still writing, that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, giving us an overview, which is pretty missable. So if your list is longer, keep listing. That's okay. I just want to acknowledge that I am so honored to be here with y'all. This is a really cruxy time of year, and I know there's a lot of energy behind going back to school. I offered this image. I was originally trained as a conservation biologist, and I specialized in plant-animal interactions, specifically birds and plants. And I got to walk around a lot of meadows. And I found this little equisetum cluster pushing up this mossy clump of mud. And this picture has always resonated with me for what it feels like to be around people who are doing the kind of work that you're doing. The steady fortitude that is required to move very heavy burdens while still being full of life and hope and something for the future is really remarkable. And I'm just so touched that that you took the time. So thank you. I know it's expensive, and I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. When we were planning for this talk, I had a chance to speak with several folks, especially Kirsten in leadership. And what was coming up for folks is that this is a really cruxy time. The last 5 years have been incredibly challenging for classrooms, but right now, where our very task, which is to teach science in the name of the state to the public, or do science or be in science, even that is being questioned in ways that are new. And it felt really important to acknowledge that sometimes when we're in this profession, a lot of us were drawn to this because we didn't need actual currency, right? If we needed that, we would have picked a very different line of work. The currency that we value is appreciation, is connection, is contribution, participation. And so all of a sudden we're in a space where not only are we not actually getting compensated financially, but those other currencies that were so motivating are in really thin supply right now. And so one of the questions that came up in planning this talk was, how do we deal with the fact that people are actually regretting some of their career choices, some of the directions they've taken with their work because of how hard it is to work right now? And so I want to start with that so that we can really soothe any part of that that might come up for you. I want to acknowledge that regret is a totally normal response to trauma. We can define trauma as an existential threat with a lack of control, which is pretty much teaching in public school in the US, right? I frame this through David Rico's work. This is a really lovely, intense book that informs a lot of my work. And throughout it, what he does is he takes a sort of childish stance and he splits it into what would the alternate adult stance be? Regret is a normal place to start, right? What have I done? Did I make the wrong choice? Because it's seeking control. If I have the mythology that I just could have had control if I did something different, that actually feels like control to certain parts of our nervous system, right? It's normal, it's understandable. It's also really good for helping us stay stuck. And it's really energetically expensive to stay stuck, right? So David Rico posits that we can move regret by splitting, it into mourning and learning. It's okay to mourn the parts of your practice, the parts of your work, the parts of your community that feel different. In fact, it's really important. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It doesn't mean that you aren't more essential than ever, and that some of the currencies that motivate you to be in the classroom aren't actually the ones that are coming to bear most importantly at this particular moment. So today we're really going to focus on the learning portion of today. And just like you're seeing, thanks Jackie in the chat, I'm eager to take your questions. And unfortunately, because of the way my brain works, I'm just going to give you some ideas first, and then we'll save some time to discuss them at the end. But please populate those questions in the chat or in the Q&A so that we can be sure to address them. So today we will define burnout, demoralization, and exploitation, which are really different causes and have really different effects and very different treatments. So we're going to be doing a lot of defining and distinguishing. Okay. In general, I'm hoping to help you stay connected to yourself and the work that you love as we start this school year. I also want to acknowledge that, again, I have the pleasure of being here because I made this thing that people have found helpful. And I want to acknowledge that we have 45 minutes and we're talking about some pretty deep change. So I don't actually say this to hawk the book. I say this because I really want you to know that investing in your well-being is a worthy enterprise. It's okay if today is not enough. It's okay if you want to go back and get some more strategies, more resources, more support. And I offer this in that frame. Okay. I might ask you to do some stuff today. You're grown. You don't have to. I can't see it. I won't know. If you are finding that you're having a really hard time retaining, sometimes doing stuff, as we know, can help. And I certainly don't want you to feel told. So feel very empowered to make whatever choice is best for you right now. And I do want to acknowledge that I'm really interested in your specific examples. I will respectfully recommend that we keep everything confidential. Know that, this won't go anywhere except YouTube. So if you have specific questions, please do leave out names, titles, positions, where you're working, stuff like that, just so that we can keep you really protected if you have questions that are really site specific to you. And again, we'll have time for questions at the end. Okay. Before we start, we're going to do the most important thing. And I say before we start sort of tongue in cheek, because this is actually starting. For the first 2 breaths, your stress might increase a little. You'll say, are you kidding? I took time out of my evening to hang out with a stranger so that she could tell me to breathe. And then on the 3rd breath, something will change. Okay, the reason something will change is because I'm going to ask you to take your diaphragm, which can have membership in our dorsal-vagal fight or flight system as a core stabilizer, or it can participate in our ventral vagal rest and digest as a deep breathing vacuum machine. We're going to ask it to switch over. When we ask it to switch over, it taps the top of our ventral vagal nerve, which sends 80% of its messaging up to the brain. And it's basically a way to say, hey, brain, we are calm enough to take a deep breath. And so maybe it's safe enough to experience calm. This is why this is a part of monastic traditions, meditation traditions the world over. Our bodies have known this for a really long time. It's also, if you hate my guts already and you leave the call immediately, if you only take one thing, may it be this, because it's free and easy. You can do it when you're greeting students at the door, when you're taking attendance, when you're driving to and from school. And in the next about 60 seconds, we're going to be able to lower your cortisol and your whole adrenocortical complex 20 to 30%. Okay. I'll count. We're just going to do a classic box breath. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4. We're going to do that 3 times. Go ahead and breathe out all your air. In for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Good job. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. And empty. 2, 3, 4. Last 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Nice work, everybody. Okay, let's check in again. Who are you and why are you here? Just by the nature of you actually showing up with all that you have going on, I already know nothing about you, but I do know that you are excellent, dedicated practitioners, and I admire your commitment. Thank you. You also understand that you're part of a system, and it's the systemic effects that we're going to be looking at today. Okay, first, a quick definition of burnout. Burnout is a really popular word. And in my experience, people conflate it with the other two phenomena we're going to discuss today. I want to keep a really simple definition of burnout so that we can treat it really simply. Burnout, according to me and our nervous systems, is simply fuel in, not matching fuel out. It's an energy balance issue. And I offer this because I've been at this for a few years now, and what I've seen, wildly contradictory to what we're sort of seeing on TikTok and in the sort of burnout journaling world. The key to solving burnout isn't actually always doing less. I have been astonished by how many teachers have been supported by doing more of what feeds them in order to get more energy in for the energy that they are expending. Now, it's well and good and very possible that some of you may need to look at doing less, but that's not necessarily the only answer, okay? I am not offering only prescriptions of loss for you to be able to stay connected to yourself and the work that you love, okay? Sometimes the work that you love is actually the key to healing your burnout. We'll get into that more in a moment. We'll define these three and then we'll go back through and detail each specifically. Okay. Burnout and demoralization are really different. Demoralization was first coined by Dr. Doris Santoro at Bowdoin. She interviewed a bunch of teachers who had left, and she likened demoralization in teaching to moral injury in nursing, where the values that drew us to the profession are different than the values that we're asked to enact every day. We can get into deep demoralization when our values are actually in opposition, right? So if we were drawn to the profession because we love to help students discover things, and we found ourselves in a district that's, for example, using a scripted curriculum that isn't very interested in phenomena-oriented learning, that's a values alignment issue. If we want to support students to figure out who they are innately and what unique contributions they have, and we need to spend a lot of our time supporting them to prepare for standardized tests that are very normative and that aren't interested in their unique perspectives or calibrations, that can be a values alignment issue. Again, not prohibitive. We might need to learn how to see and bring our own values into our teaching day in a way that the structure doesn't, by its very nature, invite, but that may still be really important and possible for us to emphasize for ourselves. And finally, exploitation. The other thing I know about y'all is that you are helpers. You want to make the world a better place. And it's a wild thing as a fellow helper to discover not everyone feels that way. And so helpers are sort of uniquely vulnerable because we have weird contracting happening in our brain. There's our actual contract. There's the make the world better contract. We also usually have some appreciation contracts running. And all of those contracts are at risk of being taken advantage of by a system that just needs more and more and more and more. And so if we identify with the parts of ourselves that are givers and it feels good to give, soon we can write ourselves into unsurvivable contracts where there's not actually a human trying to exploit us, but we find ourselves exploited. So we will talk about how to deal with all of these. We're actually going to address them in reverse order of how I've introduced them to you just now. So we'll actually start with healing exploitation. In order to heal exploitation, we have to acknowledge finiteness. We have to acknowledge that we are finite, our energy is finite, even our lifetime is finite. For this, we're going to look at the work of Bonnie Ware, who was a palliative care nurse. Bonnie Ware wrote a beautiful book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, A Life Transformed by the Dearly Departing, about her experience helping people pass. She consolidated her experience of helping people die and their top 5 bedside expressed regrets as follows. 1, I'd wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. When I read that, that was so interesting to think about in the context of teaching, because in teaching, so much is expected of us. In a nation where we haven't actually come to consensus about what school is actually for, we field expectations from all directions about the nurturing, the care, the level of criticality, our role or not role in a child's life. There are lots and lots of expectations, and we aren't frequently invited to take the time to connect with what is our true version of ourselves in our classroom. Y'all, that is just in our classroom. I'm also so aware and so concerned about all of your rich, meaningful, essential relationships outside of the classroom. Which brings us to number 2. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Our work feels good because we feel like we are helping. And our work can really harm our ability to connect to our own life and our own world. And it's easy to do too much of it. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Here, we're going to be really careful, because what I see when I see teachers not tending to this potential bedside regret is they're actually great at expressing their feelings to audiences that maybe shouldn't know about their feelings. When we haven't done a great job of managing the other areas of potential regrets, sometimes our students are the only places where we have the ability to access emotional connection. Accidentally, then, we can overshare with our students. Developmental trauma is defined as when we, as children, need to care for those who should be caring for us, right? Accidentally, if we overshare because we aren't managing our emotional landscape outside of the classroom, we can accidentally put our students in the role of caring for our feelings. So here's a great example of how caring for ourselves in our whole adult selves outside of the classroom can help us show up as the person our kids need when we're present with them. 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Just going to leave that one there. 5, I wish I had let myself be happier. We'll get to that one when we get to self-care. Exploitation is actually the place where boundaries live. Frequently, people think about burnout as the place we need to boundary up, and it's actually not. It's in exploitation and preventing our own exploitation, our own over-giving, our own over-participating. This is my current favorite definition of a boundary. A boundary is the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. And by love you, it may be a particular student, a particular lesson plan, or teaching in general, or science in general, right? What I love that's more subtle about this definition of a boundary is that Prentice is articulating what I can do. So frequently when working with teachers about setting boundaries, we can start from a very hard and fast place of, I won't do this anymore, right? So I've been helping teachers a lot this week respond to over-eager administrative asks. And it can sound a lot more like, I am so glad you're thinking about this. It feels really good to know that an admin is as concerned about this upcoming year as I am. And I'm really eager to work with you on it when I return to work on the 17th or whatever, whenever you go back, right? So articulating a boundary in terms of how we retain enough space, energy, juice to love ourselves, while also still articulating what we are available for, can help boundary setting feel more safe, more reachable, and can have it land a little easier to the folks who may be getting used to us setting new boundaries. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and grab that list of teaching related things that stress you out. And I'd like you to just cross off everything that you cannot directly control. I'll give you about a minute to do that. Please avoid any cognitive fancy footwork, right? We're not talking about once or twice removed control. I mean directly control. Take about 10 more seconds. If you'd like it, y'all, this is the first boundary you can set with yourself. You get to decide what you give energy to. If you can't control it, thinking about it is likely a part of a trauma response. It makes a ton of sense, and it might be costing you really precious cognitive space and energy. The first place you get to set a boundary is internally in deciding what you want to extend your energy to or not. Okay. Go ahead, and while you got your writing utensil or your phone or whatever you're using out, go ahead and list 3 to 5 values that drew you to your work. That can be originally, that could be this year, that can be right in this moment. What are some of the values that drew you to your work? Oh, yeah. Kirsten says, put them in the chat. Put them in the chat. Yeah. Love, learning, justice. Yes, 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 yes. All right, beautiful humans. I will give you some. Keep adding. Love it. Yes, I'm going to keep talking because that's what they brought me here to do. Please keep populating your values in the chat. Oh, sharing. Gorgeous. Yep. Community. Good. So, the reason it's really important for you to do this work is because you'll need to stand up for your values. And I'd like to walk you through the process that I went through to figure this out as I was dealing with my own demoralization. What I realized was that the system that I was operating in was not explicitly defined in terms of its values. I had to do a little bit of figuring in order to name what are the values in the space where I've decided to teach, right? And what I found was Cartesian dualism was a really useful frame. Cartesian dualism, we're aware when Rene Descartes said that body and mind are separate, right? It had some implications. It had some implications globally, culturally, and as far as intellectual movement in many different disciplines that we're still experiencing the impacts of today. And I framed that as a way to understand what I was experiencing in my own classroom and why it felt disjointed, right? So if Cartesian dualism and its corresponding suite of values had a tagline it would be, I think, therefore I am, right? Mind-body separation is the name of the game. Our approach to learning is competitive. And y'all, I do not mean to say this is happening or this is what you want in your classrooms. I mean to say these are sort of dominant culture features that we see remnant in grading systems and asking schools to compete against each other for finances, stuff like that, right? That the purpose of school is useful for individual gain, and that our focus should be measuring intelligence against a single norm or one way of knowing. And it was so helpful for me to put this into practice, or to do this framing, because it really helped me understand, oh, that is not why I wanted to be a teacher. So I also needed to look around and figure out, well, what were the values that motivated my practice? And I found those summarized in a different approach to a worldview. This is a Mayan idea. It's called In Lakesh. And in an In Lakesh framework, as opposed to a Cartesian dualism at school way, the tagline would be, I am you and you are me. That there's some interconnection here. That there's integration of mind, body, and we might even acknowledge spirit, we might not. That our approach can be collaborative, that we can build together, vision together, share. That learning can be useful for collective benefit, and that I really wanted to value multiple ways of knowing. So understanding, oh, day to day, my system is not actually set up to help me enact the values that motivate my practice. Help me to look for very specific spaces in my practice where I wanted to emphasize specific values. For today, truly simply naming your values and then literally writing them everywhere. Making them the background of your phone, writing them at the top of a whiteboard, writing them on a sticky note on your laptop. Tattoos are up to you. It's, your body, your choice. But keeping your values close to your heart is a really great way to push back against a sort of seeping osmotic demoralization that can happen when we aren't vigilantly protecting our values, because they do have a right to be in the classroom. Of course, making sure we're honoring all laws and professional boundaries, and still acting within our professional obligations. Okay. We're going to shift. We're going to go ahead and shift to thinking about burnout. I would like you to go ahead and just write a quick list of stuff you like to do. This summer, I want you to think about a day when you were feeling pretty good about how your classroom was set up, or if you didn't get that this summer, you can envision it, you can imagine it. Your classroom was all set up, you knew what you were going to be teaching, and the house was clean. Any other heartbeats on the spot were taken care of. Everybody was fed and cleaned. And you just had a minute. What did you do with that time? How do you like to spend your time? And I don't ask tongue in cheek. Frequently, teachers actually totally forget things they like to do, right? And it is okay if sitting on the couch for a second ranks high on your list. That makes a lot of sense. Just write out a couple things you like to do. We're just going to play with it a little bit. And then I've offered this table to you because we're going to be doing a little bit of evaluation in a tabulated way for those of you who like to know where we're headed. Okay, hopefully everybody has at least one thing they like to do. Hopefully, as we talk through, you might understand what things might count and what you might want to add to your list as we go through or after we finish hanging out together today. Before we talk about the benefits of the stuff you like to do, I want to be really clear that some things are more strategic and more efficient than other things as far as how we spend our time in dealing with burnout. Okay? When a teacher is in burnout, very frequently they will reach for coping strategies. A coping strategy, a coping thing we like to do, the purpose of a coping strategy is to just push pause It is to push pause on the energy leakage. It is to push pause on the, exactly, caffeine. Caffeine is fascinating, Andrew. Ooh, we'll come back to caffeine in a second. Caffeine is a great example of a coping mechanism because it feels good in the moment. It helps us keep going. We don't have to feel or address anything. Sadly, for a lot of coping strategies, everything else is the same when it's over, which is interesting because that's not always true with caffeine. So, you might have written that it feels really good to watch your favorite show, right? We reach for coping strategies when we zone out and doom scroll, when we gossip with our colleague, when we reach for any kind of altering substance that'll help us just feel a little break from our own emotions for a moment, right? From our own experience for a moment. So as we think about healing burnout, we're going to think really strategically about the difference between a coping strategy and a caring strategy. A caring strategy can feel good in the moment, but it also needs to feel better over time. So when I finish binging that entire season, frequently I'm not greeted with a sense of relief, right? Also frequently, it might be the most caring thing I can do to do something like pay a credit card bill or walk around the block. If I do this additive behavior over time, it will actually help me to feel better in the moment and over time. As far as our emotions go, rather than coping and pausing the feeling, caring actions help us feel through the feeling. Y'all, I still don't understand this. I have studied the science, I have studied the indigenous epistemology. I still don't quite understand why we need to feel our feelings to be able to move on from them. But, the data is pretty unanimous. We do. Unfelt feelings don't go anywhere except bummer places. They squeeze out sideways. They live in our cells in ways that aren't healthy. It's really healthy to feel our feelings and let them go. Okay. We know a caring behavior has been caring because something about our world is newly processed or different when that behavior is complete. Okay. So go ahead and look at your list and see how many caring versus coping strategies you listed. Now, y'all, it's really interesting because the same activity can be both. Exercise is a great example, right? If I am exercising a moderate amount and I am doing it to be alone with myself, feel my body, it helps me process through some of that adrenocortical complex, and it actually helps me kind of cogitate on things in a way that feels different than just sitting in front of my planner. Love it. If I find I'm extending my exercising because it's something that my spouse, with whom I'm having a hard time coming to agreement, forgives, and it's a way that I can avoid a relationship that needs some attention, or it's a way that I can avoid feeling feelings because I'm connecting with someone else while I'm exercising, that might be a coping behavior, right? So the same behavior can actually show up in both categories depending upon how we use it. Okay. Okay. In general, you know that you are doing caring behaviors if you're caring for these parts of your life. Y'all, there are actually 8 self-care areas of life. We're going to focus on 5 because these 5 are the ones we can deal with every single day. The 3 we're not acknowledging that I encourage you to are environmental, occupational, and financial. All of those need attention, and this is what you can start right now. Okay. Physical self-care literally just means moving your body. We did some physical self-care when we took some deep breaths together today, right? It doesn't need to be running a marathon. It can be literally anything that acknowledges that you have a body. Okay. Go ahead and note if any of the stuff you like to do involves your body. If not, that's okay. We're just going to notice. Emotional self-care is anything that helps you feel your feelings, not your favorite character's feelings, but your feelings. Just go ahead and note if any of the stuff you like to do helps you feel your feelings. Even just name, I am feeling worried. I am feeling overwhelmed. What is behind the overwhelm? I might be feeling a little scared. Okay, that's it. That's all you got to do. Social, being human with other humans. Y'all, introversion is rampant among teachers. I'm not saying you need to go, to 6 concerts a week. I'm just saying you do need relationships that aren't with your students. Intellectual, usually covered for teachers, right? We do this all the time, unless we've been teaching the same thing over and over for years and years and years. Usually teaching helps us stay really well fed in this area. And then finally, spiritual, connecting to anything bigger than yourself. Y'all, you can be atheist as the day is long. You can be a very participatory member of a faith community. It doesn't matter. And if the word spiritual bothers you, get rid of it. This is just about connecting to something more important than yourself. Okay. So go ahead and notice if any of your things you like to do help you connect to something bigger than yourself. If not, that's okay. This is a place to start. This is the way that we refuel intentionally. Okay, I want to acknowledge that we are at the time. For those of you who planned on this amount of time, I am honored to stay after for anyone who wants to chat and ask any questions. And I will stop sharing. Oh, I'm gonna let you know we did some stuff. You've already addressed attending to what fuels you. You've named your values to help you fight demoralization. And you've set some internal boundaries by only worrying about the stuff you're going to control. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Kirsten, I'm going to let you take it away for the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. Jess, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
So here's a fun
Yep.
behind the scene moment, everybody. Right as I was finishing introducing Jess, the internet went out all over the high school. That's what just happened. So here I am sitting on the floor next to my phone charger here in my classroom. Please enjoy this mass of cords. It's pretty good. We just had a really interesting question. There are a couple that are coming in. Friends, you can keep them coming. We're going to be here for a couple minutes. One that is really speaking to a lot of us right now is this question from Liz. How can you reconcile conflicting values? And I'm thinking about that like between systems and you, between colleagues and you, but also like to help our students manage that between each other in our science classrooms.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I find myself hoping I'm interpreting it correctly. I think one of the things that is tough for teachers is that just by a very definition, by being where you are, you got good at school. Even if you weren't always good at school, you got good at school. And school at its heart kind of sells us a bill of goods, right? There's the mythology of a syllabus, and that like, if we just do these things, we will get this result. And then we are in the real world, even if we're still in a school, and teachers don't actually get syllabi, right? So the things we think will lead to good outcomes aren't always the things that are supported or valued. So the first step to reconciling different values is actually cultural value that we in the West aren't great at, and we do need to emphasize practicing flexibility. It is simply the capacity to hold 2 values at once. It is simply the capacity to hold complexity. I am working in a system that wants different things than I want. Sometimes, in order to manage perception, in order to keep my seat, I'm going to need to act in the service of these values. I get to determine the length to which I participate. And I get to really invest in the values that do motivate me, that I know are good for students in all of the ways that my practice still allows me to do, and that still counts.
That's awesome. Thank you. We have another question from, I want to make sure I get everybody's names right. I wrote them down, but not your names. Liz says, thank you. That was very helpful. Jeff is trying to think about strategies about collective efforts, not just for you in the classroom toward healing from burnout, demoralization, exploitation, but like within a system. Are there one or two practices you can highlight? Obviously, you can lead a horse to water, et cetera, et cetera. But are there some high leverage strategies that might make sense for people to start playing with intellectual?
Yeah, and forgive me, I'm actually answering your question, but it might not feel like it at first. Honestly, the number one strategy is to stop venting. Stop venting to your colleagues. When you speak to your colleagues, speak to them about naming the problem and really striving for solutions. When we force our conversations with our colleagues to be really committed to solutions, like what are we going to do about it, it can really move to spaces of collective support, collective visioning, collective action.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that one theme that I'm hearing again and again that piggybacks on that is this idea of finiteness, right? This idea of limited time, limited attention, limited bandwidth, right? Like that tension is really interesting, especially in times of personal change for teachers who are in the classroom, but also in times of professional change. And somebody very wise, that is also, for example, the co-editor of the book review for the American Biology Teacher, and with whom I share a house and some kids, was recently like, remember, some is good, right? And I keep thinking about this idea that a lot of the highest leverage things are not like massive societal shifts for me, that some of them are me metaphorically closing my door and like feeling intellectually playful about trying new things in my classroom. Can you say a little bit more about that tension, about wanting and being able to see how big change would be helpful and kind of balancing that with what's accessible right now, what's doable right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, right? Similar to Voltaire's "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good," right? Um, One of the ideas that has really enriched and motivated me doing this work with teachers now, having left the classroom, is how much more I've understood about developmental biology and how certain I am, totally certain, that I actually don't care what you do. I don't care what you do in your classroom. What I know is that you being present with students and helping them feel through their own experiences, learn through their own understanding of the world is the most important. That is your job. That is your job. Curriculum doesn't matter. I mean, curriculum matters deeply, but at the end of the day, curriculum actually doesn't matter. You being a human and showing other growing humans a way that you can be a human is everything. If you do that every day, you have done an incredible job. That is the job. Literally everything else is, sprinkles, glitter, extra. It's just extra.
I love that. There's a quote from Dave Allen that I was thinking about also that Rachel brought up. It's the one that says, you can do anything, but not everything, and trying to figure out what that is. So our co-host Christy was brave enough to ask a question that I know is important for a lot of us out there. How do you convince yourself that you need to make time for you? How do you convince yourself to feed you and not just your students, your professional aspirations, the people around you? Any advice on moving forward through that or to get started with that?
Yeah. I'm just gonna name that question breaks my heart a little bit. Because all of you are so important. Like you're just so important. Um, I think that when it's hard, there are a lot of reasons it's hard for us to take time for ourselves. A lot of them are about really deep stories about ourselves. A lot of them are about the way that we grew up or what brought us to the work. There's usually a lot behind why it's tough for us to take time for ourselves. And so we can kind of bridge that reasoning, right? If it's hard for us to take time for ourselves' sake, no, take it for your students' sake, right? They will continue to need you, and they will continue to need you to be as well resourced, as attuned, as sensitive as possible. And when your stress is high, we can get into the polyvagal theory of it all if you'd like, but period, full stop, when your stress is high, you are less available to them. And so you are a better teacher when you are a calm, connected, healed teacher, period. It's not actually about you feeling good. It's actually about your efficacy.
Oh, that is a cone of a thing. Thank you.
Mhm.
Someone in the chat has read the book and says, are there some other resources that you would suggest for what some next steps are, or to focus in on some of the things that you shared with us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Y'all, I am sorry. In my fantasy, this was going to be a big reveal, and then I'm just not ready. But sign up for my mailing list because I'm going to be announcing I have a planner and a workbook coming out this fall.
Yay!
Yeah. So the response, I have received lots of requests, so there will be a workbook, there is a planner, and so I'm happy to support you. I also have started to offer remoralizing community gatherings. So to the question of like, how do we do this together? I've started hosting gatherings to actually teach people how to bring support to each other in a way that avoids venting and builds collective support and community. So head to my website, jesscleeves.com, and sign up for notification about demoralizing gatherings. And then honestly, asking like, oh, I'm so impressed. If you're already doing everything in the book, I don't know what else you can do. Like, keep doing it. Yeah, do whatever you're moved to do with that. And I hope I see you in a remoralizing gathering soon. Yeah.
That's really cool. This is exactly the thing about school, is that the sun is shining. There's like
It's
no
like
way
the
around it.
Murphy's Law Olympics.
Joy. You can like hunch under my desk. You can see the back of my desk. So one thing I've been thinking a lot about this school year is this fact that educators, in our relationships with students, we make the weather. That's somebody else's quote, but like this idea of like our emotional palette, whether we're doing well or not, kind of set the stage. I really cannot get rid of it. There we go. Set the stage for kind of what's happening with students. And obviously, you don't want to overshare with students about your emotional palette. I want to make that clear. But also, like, how do you have this tension about feeling your feelings in a system where that's not the norm, and also where like we know that emotional forthrightness is kind of what helps students be able to do their best.
Yeah. Yes. So the distinction there is that we don't ever want to put students in a position of caring for our feelings, of managing us, of feeling like their well-being is dependent on their ability to make us feel better. Right? What we want to model is that we actually can be a full human and we've still got them, right? We are still the adult in the room. So it can be really relieving for students' nervous systems when we do name, hey y'all, it's so good to see you today. I've got to let you know I'm having a little bit of a hard time. Everything is okay. We are going to be okay. And if I look grouchier today than usual, please don't take it personally. Right? So that's the way that we can care for them in a way that continues to alleviate their stress while still being aligned and authentic in our space.
It was lovely. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, people are excited. Anything else that you'd like to share with us? Any parting thoughts for you? Obviously, you covered such an amazing wealth of information that's only just the tip of the iceberg of your book. Anything for this moment that feels on top for you?
There's just the same total reverence for how important your work is and how particularly this moment. I just hope you can stay connected to. I've heard from a couple of teachers that they are scared of the book because they are so intensely weighing if they want to leave. And it feels like I would be in judgment. Y'all, I have left. What I want you to stay connected to is yourself, your health, your well-being, your ability to contribute to your community. And I totally trust your ability to figure out if that's in a classroom or not. And there is no wrong answer. You can do good work wherever you are. And I really hope to support you to do that.
That's beautiful. In these last few minutes, I want to make a really important point, which is that Jess and I first met in person. I've been fangirling Jess for a hot second, and we met in person at a conference. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention to the wonderful folks on this call that our annual conference is coming up in St. Louis in October. It is going to be an absolutely phenomenal learning experience with a lot of really smart and passionate people thinking about life science education and what it is moving forward. Friends, if you're still on the call and you have the ability to use an emoji reaction, would you please join me in thanking Jess for spending some time with us today? Just a reminder that her book is discounted for us right now, which is absolutely a gift. You'll find that it's true. You'll find that discount in the chat one more time. There's my bird clock. The hour is off. Thank you all so much for joining us. And thanks to Christy and Jackie for moderating when the internet went out. And thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
All right, my friends. We'll see you around the neighborhood. Take good care out there.